Hello, in this tutorial I will explain what are the files inside of the internal library. So let's log in our framework, choosing the Advanced Workspace and show the advanced items, so we can go to our library tab. In here we have three groups: internal library, external library and other libraries. So the focus of our tutorial will be the files inside of the internal library. So the files in here you can access through these three, or you can go to the manage docbook. It's exactly the same actions. So what are the files inside of this internal library? So we have the org and the vendor folders. So the vendor are files from third-party software that we use to run our framework. The org contains internal files that our framework uses to run. It's important to explain to you some of these files, because you can use some of these files in your own project and to be more comfortable working with our framework too. So inside of the org PHP framework folder we have a bunch of other folders, and inside of this we have the broker folder. Inside of here of clients you can see what are the methods that you can call between layers. So let's say that I'm in the presentation layer and the presentation layer is connected with the business logic layer. So I can call from getting that broker client from the business logic layer. I can call this method, the call business logic method, which basically calls a service inside of the business logic. Let's say that other layer contains a relationship with some DB layer. So in this case I can get the DB driver and execute all these methods based on that DB driver. If I want to see the code of this specific class, I can always do the source code and do the print code, and I can see some PHP code here. Now let's say that another layer has a connection with some data access layer. If I get that broker, I can call all these methods here, independent of if that data access layer, if it is an Hibernate or an iBatish layer. So I can always call these methods here. Additionally, if it is an Hibernate, I can call these two, the call object methods. And if it is an iBatish data access layer, I can call additionally these other methods too. So basically this helps you to understand when you are working inside of a layer in low code, when you are getting a specific broker, then you can call these specific methods according with the type of broker. If it is a business logic broker, or if it is a DB broker client, or if it is a data access broker client, or Hibernate or iBatish. So according with the type you can call a bunch of methods. Then we have the cache. In your project you can create your own cache. You can call a beans, which is the user cache handler bean, and then you can call these objects here, these methods here, to create cache or to read data from cache. Then in the connectors folders you have the methods that you can call in case you wish to connect with a REST remote server or with the SOAP remote server. Then in the database, in case you get the DB driver directly, you can call all these methods directly. So this is all the methods from the database driver. We have a bunch of them. Then in the layer folder, basically this is where we keep the files that manage our layers. So if you want to know more about it, you can always dig into it. In the object folder we have a file called the object type, which is explained in our documentation and in our video tutorials. Very useful, so you can create object types when you are creating data access maps or classes, so result classes or parameter classes, or result maps or parameter maps. You can create your own object types based in this class here. So if you want to know more, you can always check the source code. Then, when you are editing a business logic service, you can create annotations. It's explained in our documentation what are annotations, but if you want to know more about it, basically it's this class that gets called, so you can understand what are the capabilities that you can use. And if you want to see the codes, you can just do view source codes and do the pretty print, and you can basically understand what is this and what are the tags that you can call inside of an annotation. Then we have the utils folder. In here we have a bunch of files that you can use in your projects that are very interesting. So the global variables is to get the user global variables. The hash code, it creates an hash code based in a string. The hashtag parameter is used every time that you put a string with the hash symbol, some string and hash symbol. The system will try to find a variable with that name and replace this code with the value of that variable. So basically this is the correspondent code that does that. Based in the text, he searches for this hash codes with hash symbol, string hash symbol, and then it replaces with specific values according with the inputs that you give. Then we have other class here, which is the MIME type handler, very useful, where you can manage and get MIME types from files. Basically all the methods are here. If you just scroll down, you see basically all the methods that you have. Then you have the myArray, which basically allows you to do a bunch of handling things in arrays, like make the keys to lowercase or uppercase, or sort multi arrays or arrays with other arrays inside. Then you have a JSON class. Then you have an import. So basically in your project, if you want to import any file from the lib or from other place, you can use this function, the getLib function. Then inside of the IO folder you have a bunch of files that allows you to manage files and folders through the file system, through FTP, through the Amazon S3 service. Then inside of the text folder we have a bunch of handling classes that allows you to do a bunch of other things, like to sanitize the text, removing the JavaScript code inside of a string, shuffler that basically shuffles the characters inside of a string. We have a translator, we have a text validator that basically is very useful in your business logic service when you are creating your own logic in low codes. So you can use this class to validate specific variables. You can check if it is an email, a domain, a phone, a number, a decimal. So there is a bunch of checks here that you can do. Then we have a cookie handler, we have an image handler, we have a curl class that allows us to request URLs from the web. We have other class for SSH connections that basically allows us to connect with the server through SSH and send commands. We have another class that helps us to send emails through the send mail function of Unix or through the SMTP protocol. Then we have a CSS and JavaScript files optimizer. Basically it gets a bunch of files and combine them into them and minify them. We have HTML DOM handler that allows us to do a bunch of things based in HTML. We have a form handler that allows us based in inputs to create forms and tables and trees in HTML. Basically the HTML form handler is what the for module uses. Then we have HTML string handler that allows us to do a bunch of other things. XSS sanitizer. We have a class for pagination that allows you to create pagination based in specific inputs. And we have some XML folder with a bunch of classes that allows you to manipulate XML and RSS into arrays and vice versa. And then we have our workflow, which is very useful if you go to the workflow tasks programming, which basically when you are editing a business logic service through low code, you see a bunch of tasks in the right side that you can drag and drop to your design area. So all the tasks that appear in the menu in the right side, it's these tasks here. So you can open each of them and you can see what is inside of each individual task. You can do the source code, you can view, okay, this is like to show the properties of this specific class. This is like to, let's do the pretty codes. This is like to read a file with code and check if there is any function that it is correspondent to this task here. So the code for that is this one, and based in the diagram to print codes. So if I drag and drop this class to my workflow, then it will generate code. So the generation of the code is in this class here. Then I can see the XML file. So basically this XML file is the most important files of each task, which basically contains the relationships to the HTML, which is the properties, the task properties HTML, and contains a bunch of other files from the web root from here that I can call to show correctly that properties. And additionally, I have here then some JavaScript handlers, some callbacks based in functions that are in here that I include through these files, or they are in some other files. So basically this is what in XML, this is what defines the behavior of the task when I drag and drop it through my workflow to show it directly in the menu tasks, the icon and all of that information. And then when I click to link to other tasks, or when I click to see the properties, so all of that definitions or that type of behaviors are defined in here in this XML file. So basically each of these classes are different, so basically you can see what these files do, including the CSS files by viewing the codes, and including the JS files too. So you can understand what each of these tasks do. And that's it. Basically the internal library, it's like files that we use to run our internal framework. Some of these files you can use in your own project. Some other files is important you'll be comfortable to work with because it can be useful to call some methods when you are, example, creating your own business logic services. It's important to know if you get a database driver or if you get a broker, what are the methods that you can call. In the utils, there is a bunch of utils here that you can use in any layer of your project. So it's very important, these folders that I explained, because it makes your life easier when you are creating projects. Of course that this library is for advanced users because you need to read code, so PHP code. So of course that you need to be a programmer then to understand what these methods do inside. If you're not a programmer and if you just want to see what are the methods that you can call through low codes, of course in that case you can always do and come here and see it. You can always do this through the docbook too. If you go to our docbook, it's exactly the same thing. So let's see, like a broker, the client, which was one of the first ones that I show you. So in here you can see the correspondent method, and in here you can see the correspondent codes. Exactly the same thing through here. And that's it, so thank you very much.